Look, I can't help but think that now might be a good time for a little fire and ice.
Please do not know. It's never a good time for fire and ice.
What happens when you mix fire and ice?
Warm water, baby.
It's bubbling, baby.
Warm water! Warm water!
It is time now for a little fire and ice. Mike Tipton, Brandon the Iceman Cone, coming to you live from our favorite place on the earth, not Disneyland.
Really? Not Disneyland?
But I mean,
it's a close second.
Yeah, it's a close second, I'd say, yeah.
You know?
So we are live over here at Union Draft House, 730 Sunland Park Drive in the parking lot of Sunland Park Mall on the west side of El Paso. Once again, Brandon the Iceman Cone, Mike Tipton coming to you live from over here. What a week it has been, Brandon, with the NBA playoffs, with the NFL draft, with Major League Baseball, with hockey, with basically everything going on in the world. I mean, UTEP athletics, like everything that's been going on, right? So we've got some stuff that we'll talk about there. At about 12:30, who do we have coming on with us?
We have Big George Foreman, former two-time heavyweight champion of the world, and we're going to have him on to discuss the movie that came out about him on April 28th, of course, called Big George Foreman. I recently had a chance to watch the film. I really enjoyed it. It was a very good sports movie overall, and certainly, a great tribute to his life and what has been one of the more miraculous sports stories in the 20th century, and something that we've seen within the last 30 years. And that was him regaining the heavyweight championship of the world against Michael Moore after taking a 10-plus year hiatus from boxing not too long after losing to Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Young. So Big George, he's become a regular of ours, and we were able to get the interview because he's been a real busy man promoting the movie the last several weeks. And I'm really looking forward to having the champ on again. It's been since, I believe, September that we had him on to.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last Canelo Alvarez fight.
That was back in September, if I'm not mistaken.
So now, would he not just be a friend of the show? Is he like our Canelo Alvarez like insider? Is that who he is now?
No doubt. He's a friend of the show. He's our friend of the show, and he's so nice. He's a busy man, and I texted him a few days ago, and I said, "Can you come on again?" And we've been planning this for a while, and he said, "Would be glad to." And just text my daughter, and she'll take care of it. And she's the one, Leola, who always helps us out. So I'm excited to have Big George on. I always look forward to talking to him. He's a legend, for crying out loud.
So that's like a dream come true for both of us. Just anytime that we get to talk to George Foreman. I mean, it's effing George Foreman.
He's like all over the national media, and then boom, he's with Tip and Brandon on Fire and Ice.
It doesn't get bigger than this.
This is huge.
Yeah, ESPN, they genuflect to you and I. So a little bit later, we'll kind of break down that fight, Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder. Funny side note about that, whenever I was in Connecticut, one of the Sports Center at night hosts, his name was John Ryder, or is John Ryder, an older dude, and I was like, oh man, he's going to get worked by Canelo Alvarez.
Oh, yes.
So that's what I thought it was at first. I'd never heard of this John Ryder, but as we know, whenever you lose a match, you got to have someone you just beat the dog shit out of.
Yeah, it really helps, especially get a rebound there. You always need those rebound fights, and that's exactly what this may be in particular.
I've never heard of it in that way, like a rebound fight. It's like dating, right? Like getting back on the wagon.
That's what I was going to say. You need to have that, average-looking person, whatever. That's fine. You take what you can get, especially after the ugly breakup, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's call a spade, right?
You call yourself Steph Curry. Start knocking down some threes.
Oh my goodness, no kidding, huh? Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth, man?
I'm going to hell, man.
I love it. That's okay.
Okay, so we didn't get to have a show last week. We're not going to be able to do a show next week, Brandon. But I did want to do just a little bit of talking about the NFL draft. You got to watch it on TV. You got to see all that stuff. What teams kind of stood out to you there during the NFL draft? Because we saw Philadelphia make some amazing moves.
Yes.
We saw the Houston Texans get back-to-back picks at 2 and 3, trading up to get those picks, getting their quarterback, getting their defensive player that they wanted. What did you think? Who won the draft? And ultimately, what do you think of the Dallas Cowboys draft?
Well, I thought the Dallas Cowboys did a decent job. I probably would give them a B+. I mean, overall, they filled those needs. I mean, in terms of, some people were questioning their first-round pick, but they needed to fill out the defensive interior line, and that's something that they really needed to work on. And really, they do have that solid foundation defense, but there's always room for improvement, and that's exactly why I thought it was a solid pick. I feel that they also filled in your need. You lose a tight end, you get a tight end. Running game, you don't have Ezekiel Elliott anymore. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Pollard coming off the injury. They get the scout's son. I like the connection. I feel overall that they are trying to fill those voids. And of course, the proof will be in the pudding ultimately to see how any draft players will end up working out, no matter how good they were collegiately.
Yeah.
But overall, I'd say a B+ for the Cowboys. And clearly for me, the rich get richer with Philadelphia. Unbelievable. I feel the Bears goofed because you get a 4th-round pick for a guy that probably was the best defensive player in the draft. Yes, he's got a terrible pass. Yes, he's a knucklehead. But then again, there's a lot of players that have terrible pass that are knuckleheads that turn out to be superstars. And if I'm the Bears, I'm going after that kid. I'm taking him. I'm not getting a 4th-round pick. Philadelphia, how much better are they going to be next year? I mean, good luck to the Cowboys. You know, you talk about creme de la creme. Unbelievable how tough that's going to be for them to overtake Philly for the East.
But you also got to look at like what Philadelphia had to go through, right? Like during free agency, Philadelphia lost 9 of their starting 11 defenders. So they needed to get some people on that defense. They needed to, restock and do all that. Offensively, whenever they lose Miles Sanders to go over to Carolina, how do you replace him? You get Swift from Detroit, and that's a great pick for them. That is a terrifying pick for them.
Yes.
Because that's how you make Jalen Hurts as impactful as he can be. Like, that's how you get the most out of Jalen Hurts, right? Like, having a good, solid running game after him, so that way he doesn't have to run the ball. Just having the threat of him running the ball is how you get the most out of Jalen Hurts. I like seeing what the Eagles did. I'm not going to say that they won the draft. I really don't know, because just because you stockpile picks and you get a bunch of people from Georgia doesn't mean that they're all going to go and be, the same people that they were in Georgia playing against lesser competition. You know what I mean? Like, that's always going to be one of the things there. As for what the Dallas Cowboys said, right? Whenever they draft Mozzie Smith, they needed help on, like, everyone's like, well, the Cowboys got outmaneuvered by people. The Cowboys had a terrible draft, this and that. You address your needs. If you have a player that's there available that fits your needs, you get that damn player. Like, there's nothing else you do about it. You just go get that particular player. And for me, whenever the Dallas Cowboys get themselves a defensive tackle, you get that nose tackle, that guy in there to stop the run, right? How did they lose that game to San Francisco last year? It was because they had held the San Francisco 49ers run defense or running offense to 17 yards in the first half. The San Francisco 49ers run offense to 17 yards. Then an injury happens to an interior defensive lineman, and they just run right up the gut.
Right up the gut.
Ultimately in the game at like 140 yards rushing, because all it was in the third and fourth quarter was, we're just going to run this ball down your throat. You can't stop it.
Right.
So now you get someone that you add into that position that can give you a little bit more depth. That is exactly what you need, right? You talk about the running backs, right? We don't know what they're going to get with Pollard. I told you a couple weeks ago, I think that Zeke is going to come back to Dallas at the league minimum.
He could.
And he more than likely will.
And why not? Who else? I mean, look, he's an aging running back in a young man's game. And, he certainly has declined, but he's that goal line guy that you want to put in there to get you those tough, through 2-3 yards and get you that end zone score. So, I mean, I say, obviously take him back with open arms. If nothing else, that's a good business decision on the Dallas Cowboys part. And yes, I mean, you don't know how Pollard's going to be after that injury. I mean, that injury's ended some players' careers, unfortunately, but I do feel he's going to be back, especially with the modern way these guys end up doing surgery and whatnot. And I think he's going to be okay. But long story short, yes, I mean, that interior defensive line is so important and so crucial. And I will never get on a team's case and bust their chops for adding more depth, because you can never have enough depth. And who won the draft? Who the hell knows who won the draft in the end?
I'm glad.
Because, we don't know. You don't have a crystal ball.
I am glad that you said that. Like, how the hell do we know, right? Because that's the main thing. If anybody knew anything about the damn game, Tom Brady would not have been the last pick in the 6th round.
Right.
Right? Like, it's just flatly cut. Ryan Leaf wouldn't have been picked right after Peyton Manning. Right? Like that. If anyone knew what the hell was going on, that's like, I don't necessarily care about the draft as seeing, who goes where, what does what, blah, blah, blah. What I care about with the NFL draft, and it was something that was new to me going last year for the first time, was that's the one time, I guess, as a fan where you just have hope.
Sure.
Like, just unadulterated, unfiltered hope for your team. Like, you're sitting there trafficking in nothing but, this guy could be the one that changes the fortunes for my team.
Sure.
No matter how bad your team might have been the year before, no matter how good your team might have been the year before, you just have hope. And that, to me, is like the best part about that feeling over there. Like, walking around the draft, and I wish, Brandon, that we could have done some stuff over there.
Yeah.
Should we tell that story?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's a story and a half, isn't it? You start.
Okay.
I'll finish.
So the day was last Wednesday,
Last Wednesday.
or a couple of Wednesdays back, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to go. We've been planning this whole trip to go to the draft.
Kansas City,
We've got
here
our
we come.
plane tickets. We've got our rental car. We've got our hotel rooms. We've got everything.
Picked out. Grease is everything, right?
Everything has been scheduled in. The one thing we got to do is just make it to the airport.
Right, that's all.
We're both going to leave work a little early, make sure we get there on time. Everything is good to go. 10 o'clock in the morning comes. What happens? Your flight's been delayed by 20 minutes.
Okay.
That ain't bad. We had an hour and a half layover.
You texted me, our flight got delayed. Yeah, 20 minutes. We're fine.
Yeah.
We got a 2-hour layover, hour and a half in Dallas.
Then your flight's been pushed 40 minutes. That's inconvenient.
Enough time to get off, use the washroom, get on
yeah.
the next plane.
Well, not just that. Now we don't have to rush to the airport. We can take some time.
Like
we're
have a nosh
good.
before, whatever.
Then it gets pushed 2 hours.
Yeah.
And at that point, we're fucked.
We're
right? Like it was game
fucked.
over.
Yes.
So then it's okay. What did you start doing?
I started calling American. I started looking for alternate flights. I started, guessing that, obviously this was attributed to probably piss poor weather, which it was in Dallas. I'm looking at what is a later flight to get into KC? What do we have maybe tomorrow morning? Kind of looking at plan B, C, D, and E, and F, and so on. And then I tell you, look, Tip, we may be in trouble. And I'm going to call American, and I'm going to see what they can do for us. And sure enough, I call American, and they say to me, sir, have you ever heard of the expression SOL? Yeah. Well, you're shit out of luck, sir. Yep. You have to actually get to Kansas City by tomorrow before the evening.
One of their options, and again, this isn't like us, dumping on American. It's just the times that we're living in, right? Like there's so many constraints on travel that it's so hard to get to where you need to go. One of their options for me, Brandon, was I fly out of El Paso, I go to Dallas, I have a 3-hour layover in Dallas, fly out to Vegas, have a layover for an hour and a half in Vegas, go into Chicago, right? It's already the next day. Have a 6-hour layover from Chicago into Cincinnati, that layover from Cincinnati into Kansas City. I would have gotten there Friday morning at about 4 a.m. had I left Wednesday.
That's crazy.
At 7 o'clock at night.
Crazy,
right? And I was like, how is this an option to you? Like what makes you think me saying I got to get there tonight? It was like, yeah, let's get there on Friday.
Friday works for
Friday
you.
morning, right?
Sir?
Like, yeah, that's the reason why you want to get there.
There's no sense of urgency, right?
Yeah, no, you're good, right? There's nothing major going on in Kansas. Nothing happens there.
Nothing's going on besides barbecue, right?
I mean, I will say this, though. I was very impressed with the city, like Kansas City. It's a beautiful place. Shout out to Travis Stoner from Three Missions Brewery, 10179 Socorro Road. Never miss an opportunity to plug a sponsor. Phrasing.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I mean, why? Yeah.
So shout out to Travis, shout out to Danielle, who's with his wonderful wife. They had some amazing friends over there in Kansas City that I became friends with. I learned something about myself, Brandon. I think you might not know it as well as like some other people may know it, Destiny, other people like that. I'm a very introverted person.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a very it takes a lot. Like I got to, turn up the personality to like go places and introduce myself to people and this and that. Other than that, like I don't like big crowds. I don't like any of that, right?
Okay.
So it takes a lot for me to get there. Whenever I'm in Kansas City, apparently I'm making friends with as many people as I can. I also want to give a shout out to Twisted Tater. They were actually one of the food trucks at the NFL draft. Kansas City style cheese fries.
Oh my God. With barbecue on it,
with
of course.
Barbecue brisket.
How was that?
It was
Heavenly?
amazing.
Yeah?
It was one of the top 5 things I've ever put in my mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God,
or in my body.
I don't want to know anymore.
Yes, you do. That came out creepy as hell.
I was going to say,
wow.
Should I hide at a table now or later?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Anyway.
You were like that, never that bad.
So, apparently I'm making friends left and right, like over the draft and stuff like that. And Travis's wife, Danielle, is like, no, you make friends really fast. I was like, no, I'm just like being friendly right now. And then it got in my head where I was like, do I not need to be talking to people? Like, should I just be quiet now?
Talk to everybody, man. No, talk to everybody. You never know who you can meet, right?
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to like a couple of the breweries that were out there. Boulevard Brewery, that's an absolutely amazing place. They sell their beer nationally, so they do have some of the beer here in El Paso. It's the Southwest Boulevard Lager. That is absolutely amazing. And then Stone Ridge Brewery as well. They've got an amazing set of SI out there. Fantastic job. Micah, it was awesome meeting you. I just run into this guy at about midnight at his brewery, just hanging out outside, and we, spark up a conversation and start drinking some of the beer that he brews. What a good time.
I don't see why not. And of course, that's just your, you talk about your personality. I mean, when you go somewhere, and especially a different city, you got to be able to get to know the local crowd. You got to get to know everybody. What I always say, I tell everybody, when you travel, get to see what it's like where you're at. Don't just be an introvert. Get to know everybody. You know what I mean? Why not? I mean, that's what it's all about. You mingle with the locals, because honestly, if you don't mingle with the locals, then you're not going to nearly have as good a time if you're not mingling with the locals. So I couldn't see it being any other way as, my buddy Tip mingling with the locals.
I'm trying. It's called root beer.
What is it?
Like it's an actual root beer.
Like
so
a root beer float?
on their tap they have root beer.
So it's actually root beer.
Is it
a root beer beer or is it a root beer? So that means it tastes like a root beer float or what? It's root beer, isn't it? They sold.
Yeah, that's root beer. That's root beer, right?
I don't.
It's like diet root beer.
Oh my God, I could drink this whole thing. That's a root beer.
Have that. That's yours then.
You're kidding me.
No, I don't like root beer.
Dude, why in the hell?
You're already sweet enough. You don't need all that shit.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And that is actually root beer. That's like A&W root beer.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like,
I don't get it. So that's a shtick, no?
It's got to be like
it's like a $10 root beer.
It better not be. You better enjoy the hell out of that then.
I'm gonna savor every minute of it. You better order number whatever's next. That's for sure.
I'll say that's what the goal is, right? Like whatever number 18 was. I could have.
So you were on 18 and 18's a root beer.
I will say in her defense, there was a lot of noise.
So did we say, can I have a root beer though? I don't.
No, I said whatever beer number 18 is.
You think she heard you right, or you think
no?
She heard you
like clearly, I mean, if it is
not a beer, that can't be.
If that is like if an A&W root beer is on tap as number 18,
there's no way.
I like me personally as like the agent of chaos that I am. I'm cool with that, but I also don't want it to be a
good
$30 root beer.
I was gonna say I haven't had a root beer in a month of Sundays, but it's pretty good.
Brandon's phrase of the day:
month of Sundays. My dear late great Uncle Bernie used to say it all the time.
Might as well get into it. It's been a while since we've done this. Our Yiddish word of the day.
Okay. Yiddish word of the day. Yiddish 101, folks. Are you ready? Here's a good word for you guys. I don't know that I've used this one. When somebody says that they're famished in their head, my dad used to wake up and say, "Would you leave me alone, son? I'm all famished." I said, "Dad, what do you mean?" Famished literally means like you're kind of like all confused in your head. You're waking up, you're getting rid of the cobwebs, or like you got 20 people talking to you at once, and you're like, "I'm just famished in my head." So the Yiddish word of the day, kids, is famished.
We got to come up with like better production, so that way, like whenever you do it, I could have had like spin on the screen,
little
like
dreidels and potato latkes.
Yes, I like it.
Jewish stars and all that stuff. Yes, absolutely. I think that's phenomenal.
It's the way it should be.
And I don't see why not. Yeah, and actually, there's a good nosh this weekend at Temple Mount Sinai. They have a Jewish food festival.
Jewish food festival.
Yes, they're going to have all the good Jewish nosh there today and tomorrow.
So like this, I thought like
today and tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I was bar mitzvah at Temple Mount Sinai.
I
was back in 91. That's when I became a man. It's true. When a Jew becomes, he's 13, he becomes a man.
Hey, I mean, I'm with it. Just phrasing.
Right.
I became a man at Temple.
Things. He's a mirror.
Yeah.
It's a gefilte fish.
In about 10 minutes, we'll have George Foreman joining us on the show so we can talk about the movie, all the stuff that he's got going on as well. Over here at Union Draft House, 730 Sunland Park Drive, they will be showing the fights. Like there's multiple plural when it comes to fights because it's not just boxing. You got UFC 288. What do you know about that? You're bigger into the UFC than I am. I'm not a big fan of it. So tell me about. What were the notes you had there? Because you looked like you wanted to say something. That was a paragraph and a half.
Well, that was for George Foreman.
Oh, okay.
The UFC 288 card, Cejudo and Sterling is the main event. Burns is the co-main against Muhammad. And, the third fight away is a strawweight fight between Andrade and Jan. Look, this is a card that's been changed. There's been a lot of fight drop, so it's kind of lost a little bit of its luster. But I really do feel that the main event is going to be the bread and butter. Sterling 22-3, Cejudo 16-2. I like Sterling. I think he's got a good shot of pulling this one off. But to me, like I said, this was a card that really had an amazing card in the making. But unfortunately, you had some big fights drop off. I can't wait, though. We're looking at early July. More than likely, Stipe is going to fight Bones Jones. Oh my goodness. Am I excited about that one?
I might actually watch that one.
And you know what? I got a UFC connection now, so I'm going to try to work on getting us fighters pretty soon. FYI.
Look at this
excited.
guy.
And, of course, Canelo's fight. It's Cinco de Mayo weekend. So that means Canelo's fighting tonight and the Kentucky Derby's today. I mean, my God, what a sports day.
What a sports weekend.
Sports weekend.
Got
Yeah.
the NBA playoffs. We got the
NHL
hockey playoffs.
Cinco de Mayo. We got
soccer,
baseball, everything.
I don't know who this is. I think Liverpool and
that would be Liverpool and Brie, like the cheese.
What is perfect?
What does that stand for? BRE.
BRE.
Brie.
Brie.
Is that debris or
It is
Brie? Like debris or Brie?
I think it's debris.
I think it's debris. It's short for debris. That's so funny.
We know everyone comes to Fire and Ice to get all their soccer talk on.
Absolutely.
What
And
the
NASCAR
hell
over
is
here.
that?
Dude, did you see that? What
He's
is
like,
that?
he just jumped over the ball.
Was there like 0.10 of a second left and they ended it? That was it. That was interesting. And we got NASCAR over here. That's always fun.
Okay, yeah, okay. So baseball, all that going on. The White Sox are hot garbage. The Yankees not that much better since everyone wants to be hurt.
5 in the last 7, I think. Right,
Who?
2 in the Yankees. 2
Yeah,
and 5
it's been.
They
bad.
lost to Tampa again yesterday. Yeah. Well,
It's-
Tampa is the creme de la creme.
Well, maybe, but whenever Stanton and Judge are both out, your lineup is completely different. You know what I mean? And it looks like in just a couple seconds, he's not sitting down there yet. So in a couple minutes.
You remember George, like last time, he was sitting there and he came, and his daughter, Leola, she told me that during the pandemic, she actually created a virtual office for him, so he could do his interviews. You remember last time how he had all his awards, and it was pretty cool. If memory serves me correct, I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
But yeah, you know what? It's a great sports weekend. I always look forward to this weekend because you always know it's going to be Canelo. Canelo's going to fight Cinco de Mayo weekend. You also know that there's going to be obviously you have the Kentucky Derby, the first Saturday in May, the Run for the Roses, the most difficult race of all races to handicap because you have a 20-horse field and anybody can win. Anybody can win. Churchill Downs, absolutely legendary. We've had Mike Smith on in the past, and I was thinking, in the near future, we can get him on again to talk about and handicap one of the Triple Crown races. I knew we had Big George coming on already, so I kind of wanted to not, get too many guests in one day.
Yeah.
I'm working on somebody for NBA playoffs. You know me. I'm always got something in the mix.
Got a finger in everything.
I guess so. That was a good one. I like that.
I'm saying there wasn't supposed to be anything funny about it. It was just simply that.
But I do. You know me. I mean, I'm the type of person I look down and there's Coach Dimmel, as you call him, and I'm going over to bug the poor guy when he's trying to have a grease, right?
Also, I want to take this time, Brandon, to give a congratulations to our friend while we're waiting on George to join us here in just a couple minutes. Our friend Omar Thomas getting named
the head coach of
the
Socorro.
new head coach for basketball at Socorro High School, my alma mater.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be going out there as much as possible to show a little bit of love. Love me some basketball, and now even more whenever we got OT over there.
I love it. And I say we have
guy.
him on in a couple weeks. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll have him on to talk about his new position and maybe break down the NBA playoffs as well. OT, a legend, only 2 years at UTEP, but was one of the best scorers in UTEP basketball history. And ultimately, he is an amazing player overseas, won championships, MVP awards. The man was absolutely incredible. And I'll be honest with you, I'm so happy he's come back home. His wife's from here.
Yep.
He was an assistant coach at,
Pebble Hills?
Pebble for a year. And now he's a head coach, and that's going to lead to greener pastures for me.
Yep, it's going to be great to see what he's able to do over there, trying to turn stuff around over at Socorro. And, of course, just having, as he was called in Italy, Black Jesus as the basketball coach.
He was amazing. I mean, it was unbelievable.
The 2 years at UTEP, like, it really – that was a point in time where UTEP was like a habitual contender to make the NCAA tournament.
Well, they made
right?
it both years he was there, the 04 and 05, right? That was with 1 year with Doc and 1 year with Gillespie.
Yep.
And the man was amazing. He was heavily recruited. He was one of the best JUCO players in the country, and he was heavily recruited around the country. And luckily, UTEP was able to land him, and they changed everything. And he is a good buddy of mine. I went to school with him, had many classes with him.
He said that he's the reason why you graduated.
Yes, he is the reason why I graduated.
Yeah,
If it wasn't for him, I'd still be in college.
You're like, I'd still be doing all that stuff.
That'd be like Rodney Dangerfield, back to school. Oh, boy.
Okay, so in a couple of minutes, once again, George Foreman is going to join us here on Fire and Ice. We are over here at Union Draft House 730 Sunland Park Drive in the parking lot of Sunland Park Mall on the west side of El Paso. Cider-Day. That means they got the $4 sours and ciders going for them today. They've also got the $2 build your own pizza, which we're always a fan of.
Always. You got here early and had 3 of them, I'm sure, knowing you.
7.5.
2 of them, sorry.
7.5 of them. Just
7.5? Are you kidding me?
Just to myself.
Wow.
So we've got that going on over here. Tonight they got the Canelo Alvarez fight, him taking on John Ryder, along with some other fights that they've got going on, UFC 288 tonight as well. It's just a full-on combat sport night, Brandon, and it seems like it's going to be fantastic for everyone over here at Union Draft House. Don't forget they've also got the 100 beer challenge, which
Should we ask her about the root beer while she's here?
Yeah, let's
so is
let's
number
do
18
that.
really root beer? What, like actual root beer? Wow, it's very good.
It is.
It's like A&W or Dad's root beer, but it's very tasty. I think he's ready for number 19 with that being said.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm enjoying it, though.
Yeah, he's all about his root beer. Me, not so much.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had a root beer. And speaking of root beer, you know what my grandma used to call a root beer float in Chicago?
What's that?
A black cow. You have ever heard of black cow? That's a Midwestern term, cow, K-O-W. And I told my grandma when I was a kid, what is a black cow? And she said, it's a root beer float. And she said, but in the Midwest, we call it a black cow. And so, yeah, that's what she used to make us with A&W root beer and ice cream.
I mean, I used to love,
who did like a root beer float growing up, right?
I think that was the last time as a kid that I actually chose to drink root beer.
Yeah, I don't drink root beer.
No,
I don't. I mean, it's good, but I don't drink it really. Except today.
Two different tastes on what good is, because root beer definitely not there. We'll ask George whenever he joins us if he's had a root beer.
He likes root beer. Huh?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was at Gunther's, right?
Oh, the German place. That was a good place,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know George loves cheeseburgers, but you think he likes root beer too?
I mean, who doesn't like a root beer?
I mean, I imagine he does.
Other than me, what type of monster doesn't like root beer? Like, obviously, the root beer float will be fantastic. I'll go ahead and take that right now.
Let me ask you another question. Have you ever heard of a Boston cooler?
Me?
Yeah.
A Boston cooler?
Yeah. My dad, when we were kids, he used to make it on hot summer days here in El Paso. Vernon's ginger ale. It had to be Vernon's ginger ale, right? And then he would take and put vanilla ice cream in, and he called it a Boston cooler. And it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
A Boston cooler.
And a black cow, yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad and my grandma, they taught me about two of the greatest drinks on planet.
I think I'm going to try that now.
It's pretty good. You got to have Vernon's ginger ale, though.
Vernon's ginger ale.
It's a very unique.
Can't be
I
Schweppes.
mean, you can get Schleppes if you want. I don't even think it's called Schleppes. Schlepp is a Yiddish word. Oh,
Schweppes.
Schweppes. Schleppes.
I was say you just defaulted to Yiddish right there. It's like your normal default. Could have gone Canada Dry. Instead, you went Schleppes.
Hey, you said Schleppes.
I said Schweppes.
I know. Actually, Canada Dry is good. They're all, what's this all about? It's good stuff, man. I love Canadian Dry or Canada Dry, whatever it's called.
Dry.
Have I just royally screwed up?
He's broken now. He is broken. He's in his own head with his own words.
Yeah. Now let me ask you: is that new and phenomenal?
I haven't tried it yet,
Okay,
so let's try. I don't know what it is.
Apple juice.
It kind of looks like a Yingling.
It's number 19.
It smells like a Yingling. I'm thinking it's a Yingling.
If it's Yingling, you got it made, dude. Because I know how much you love Yingling. That was a big sip.
That's not Yingling.
What is it?
I don't know.
Can you describe it? Is it crisp?
It's a mix between like Yingling and the like Orchard.
Okay, so it's got that apple like. That's cool.
Yeah.
So it works for you then.
It does. I mean,
Okay.
I'm a fan.
Okay, well then if you're a fan, then I'm a fan. I mean, we're all fans.
But I know for a fact that there's someone that we both love that most people on this planet are a fan of as well. The one and only, the legendary George Foreman joining us here on Fire and Ice. George, you had an amazing movie come out about you. I don't even know if you're ready yet.
He's getting his suit fixed. I like that.
Everything's getting fixed. You got to make sure he's looking
if you're not handsome enough, George, right?
Good to hear from you guys.
Hey, it's good to hear from you, George Foreman, two-time heavyweight champion of the world. George, your movie, Big George Foreman, came out on April 28th. I had the honor of watching it on Wednesday. I absolutely loved it. What do you think about the film that they made about your life, and how accurate is the movie in your opinion?
Well, they told me they had to cut a lot of things out, and I wish they had been able to cut a lot of things out of my own life. But it's a great compliment when you look up there and see a movie about your life. Everything traveled real fast because you got to put almost 30 years of boxing and all of that into a quick script, and we fought a little bit with the script, but in the end, it came out fine. It was a nice, good movie.
If there was one thing that they took out of the movie that you could have added to the movie, what would that have been?
You know what? They did a good job, especially once I saw the part. I'm a young boy, and I could remember as soon as they put it on there and photograph growing up without hope. And you don't realize that until today, when you realize what hope really is, that a lot of children grow up, there's nothing like potential and success, words that didn't exist. And I saw that and I cried. From then on, I was like, okay, good movie.
Oh yeah, I know, and it kept me busy for a little over than 2 hours there. And one thing that impressed me the most is when you decided to go into the Job Corps in California. Talk about once you got there and how soon you actually took on boxing and kind of, it showed you at first a little rusty because you didn't know anything about the sport, but how soon did you pick it up and become good at it once you started boxing?
Yeah, going into the Job Corps, that's where I met this Doc Brodus. This guy took an interest in me. I don't know why. I wanted to be a football player,
Right.
But I tried out for boxing, told him I wanted to be a boxer, taking up a challenge from a previous Job Corps senator. I told him I'm going to be a boxer. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I jumped in the ring. I couldn't hit the guy, couldn't find the guy. It was a little guy, but he outboxed me, and I said, I'm never going back because everybody in the gym laughed at me. But this guy stayed on me. George, you can be an Olympic champion. You can do this. And I didn't want to let him down, and that's what happened. And finally, it took hold. 67, I had my first boxing match. 68, I was a gold medalist because I had that punch.
Yeah, and that's what they said, that you had one of the we know you had one of the greatest punches in boxing history. And what they showed you in Mexico City, they showed you were fighting a pretty tough guy, and then you ended up knocking the fella out. That was a cool scene with you and the guy in Mexico City there where you got the gold medal.
Yeah, Hollywood did its part. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, that's what
they didn't understand how afraid I was.
Okay.
This would have been that Olympic gold medal match would have been my 25th boxing match. And most of them was the Olympic trials and the tournament to qualify and then the Olympics. I didn't have much experience, and everybody talked about the Russians, how capable they were. I was afraid. They didn't show that. I'm so glad.
And I thought it was interesting. They showed you and your mom, and they showed her saying, George, why you want to go on to be a fighter? Was that part true? Was she telling you were nuts when you wanted to actually become a professional?
My mom had this fear. I said, look, boy, you have a quick temper. You're going to get in trouble. She didn't want me even going to the playgrounds to play because she said, you're going to get in trouble. You fight too much. She had to keep an eye on me. So when I told her about boxing, she said, what? Fighting again? So I hid my boxing from her. She found out that I was really a boxer in the Olympics. Someone said George Foreman is on ABC's Wide World of Sport.
Right,
and she
right.
said, what?
She
did not buy into it. Never did she buy into it, to be serious with you. She didn't buy into it.
So what was that conversation like whenever she's like, oh, I had to hear from someone else that you're a boxer now? Because I don't imagine that was a fun conversation.
Yeah, right in her living room. Everybody tuning in on television. She said, I can't believe it. So there were a lot of guys who would come around from New York City with big contracts and money on the table for her. They let him sign for us and we'll give you this. And she said, first of all, I'm going to tell you, nobody can tell that boy what to do. And secondly, I don't really want him to be a boxer. I don't really want him fighting. She never could distinguish boxing from just pure out fighting.
One scene I loved, besides when they showed you and Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle, was when you won the heavyweight championship against Frazier. You were an underdog, and you had, Cosell say, "Down goes Frazier," the famous "Down goes Frazier," and they showed it. I think it was in Kingston. And what was that like for you? And were you in absolute disbelief when you were the underdog, but you beat the great Joe Frazier to become the heavyweight champion of the world?
One of my happiest days as an athlete. I mean, that was the beginning of my happiness, and that was the end of my happiness when I beat Joe Frazier. I mean, jumping and shouting in the ring, and you can feel John L. Sullivan, Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, all these great fighters like a ghost come up on you. You feel like you're the heavyweight champion of the world. That moment will always be set aside in my memory. I'll never forget that. Frazier, of course, was the giant slayer. He had beaten Muhammad Ali, and you name them. The bigger they are, the old saying, the harder they fall. He made that a reality. I was afraid of him. The only guy that I got into the ring with that I was truly afraid of. Knocked him down once. I said, I got to get him again. He's going to kill me. Knocked him down twice. I said, I really got to get him. I kept knocking him down. After 6 times, they declared me the champion of the world. He was still up.
Wow. Wow.
We have a comment from one of our listeners here, Hawk Scott, saying that he absolutely loves your grill, George. I want to ask you, as someone that you got to live this, right? Like, you're watching a movie about your life. Was there ever a point where you're watching that movie and you're thinking to yourself, I can't believe I did all this?
Oh, yeah. Because you jump up at night and think, man, it was like a purpose to your life that I didn't see it coming. I didn't. Then you look at it on the movie screen and you said, how in the world could this happen to a person? Like I said, with that little boy without any hope, then the next thing you know, I'm speaking with you guys right now. This doesn't make sense.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, you know, winning the World Heavyweight Championship and then talking to us, it's basically the same thing.
I mean, that is amazing, man, when you consider I won that gold medal match in '68, and I remember standing on the platform listening to the national anthem, and one of my cousins had caught me shooting hooky from school. She said, and I told her, I forgot something because she saw me rolling in the window. She said, don't worry, I'm not going to tell. I said, no, I forgot something. I'm going to school. She finally said, George, you're not going to be anything. No one in this family ever become anything. Go to sleep. I'm not going to tell. And there was on this Olympic, on the podium, receiving a gold medal, smiling. And I could hear her saying, no one in his family. And I thought, I got you this time. That moment was, I'll be honest with you, that was the highlight of my whole athletic career, winning that gold medal.
Oh, yeah. No, what a great honor for you. And so the movie, of course, takes us up to right before you retired. They show you against Ali, then you against Jimmy Young. Going into the fight against Ali, they show, him talking the trash, and then, of course, the actual fight itself. Was there a lot of trash talk before the bout, and how accurate was the actual scene when you were in the ring with him and his philosophy with the rope-a-dope?
No, Muhammad, is strange. I was staying in an intercontinental hotel in Africa.
Right.
And every day he'd come up in the afternoon, I guess, in the bar and talk with the reporter and just running his mouth. And one reporter came up to me, George, he's there running his mouth, just sneaking up on it. Just sneak up on it. And I said, oh, okay. And I was coming from workout, and they were just running his mouth, and I walked up on him and stared at him. He's like, oh, they laughed. They had set it up themselves. He sit down like a quiet little boy, didn't say a word. But that wasn't any trash talking. I remember we faced each other, which would have been the first time we had a conversation in the ring to fight. Just before the fight, and I stared him in the eye, and I was giving him the cold look. He said, George, you don't belong in here. You in high school when I beat Sonny Liston. And I almost burst out laughing because I wanted to tell him, man, I never seen a day of high school in my life. He said somebody had told him wrong. He was going to psych me out with this. I said, man, you got the wrong guy. I never went to high school.
Wow. Now, let me ask you, they show you talk to Ali at his house and all that, and he said, hey, George, I want you to beat Norton again so we can have a rematch. Did that occur, or did he tell you I want to have a rematch, or did you ever just, express that you wanted a rematch with Ali?
I left boxing, and after the Jimmy Young fight, I just didn't box anymore, and he finally got a number. I don't know who gave him my number, and we started talking, and we became good friends. He begged me, George, you can use my training camp. You can do anything. Please come back and beat Ken Norton for me. He said, I just can't beat him. He said, but you can beat him, George. He's afraid of you. But they were going to make him fight Ken Norton again or strip him of the title.
Wow.
He just didn't want to do it. Finally, I think they did strip him of the title, and Norton got it. But I told him, I said, I'm not coming back into boxing. He begged where we'd meet up and became the best of friends, man. I love the guy. Oh man, there was something exciting about Muhammad Ali. I can't even explain to you.
With all the people that you came across in boxing, would you say that that's the one where you're like, that was the most unlikely friendship for you? Just given the history and everything, would that be like one of the more unlikely friendships?
Yeah, because after I lost that fight in Africa, man, I'm there jumping up. I thought I beat the count. I guess everybody think they beat the count, even if they count to 30. I jumped up, and the fight was over. And I said, and this guy was running his mouth. I became really enraged. I hated the guy. Really, I wanted revenge on him more than anyone in the world. But then I found, my religion and everything, and I started talking with him, and I realized that was a great occasion for both of us in my life to meet him in the ring. And we started to talk, and he'd call me up in weird hours of the night and the day, and we talk and meet. I love the guy. To this day, I still have the great memory, and I miss him. Like I still miss him.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And then
I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, no, and they even note that you guys talked on the phone every day. They mentioned that in the movie. I thought that was amazing. And then they show your retirement the first time, and they show that you became a preacher. You opened a club for kids to help them out in Houston, a rec center. What made you decide after about a decade that it was finally time to try and go back in the ring?
I never thought I'd get back into boxing, but I started at Houston because someone approached me about helping some kids, and the kids later on got in trouble, and I felt guilty about it. So I took my money I'd earned and opened up the youth center, and didn't realize it was a draining thing. All of the money was going, and I didn't want to close it down. And one preacher was raising money for me one day. He said, "Yeah, you can have Joy more money than this." He was counting the money by the altar. And I said, "You know what? I'm never going to ask anyone for anything ever again. I'm going back to boxing. I'm going to be heavyweight champion of the world. That's how I'll get the money." Only then, after 10 years, did I decide to get back in the ring. Man, taking my shirt off, that was the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. They showed you and you were out of shape, but then they show you doing something I never believed it unless I saw it. You were training in Texas and Houston by carrying a baby cow. Is that true? Yeah, I swear.
We pull a publicity stunt by me picking up a cow because nobody thought I could do it. We were going to do a little trick. And finally, the cow fell on me, and I held it up and walked it around. They said, "Oh, my goodness, this guy is strong." And that's me and carrying the cow around.
Go ahead.
Okay, so whenever you look at like all these little stories and stuff like that, which is the one that you always lead with whenever you're talking to like, strangers out there? Like, George, what's your favorite story out of everything you've done? What's the one that you're like, this is what I want everyone to remember about me?
Oh, police following me around in Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, and I'm running from the police. They're about to catch me. My two friends who helped me rob people, we were muggers. They disappeared. There I was alone nearest to the cops, and I ran under the house, and I tried to hide myself, and I thought the dogs were going to sniff me out, and that movie shows part of it. I covered myself from maybe the sewage so that the dogs wouldn't sniff me out. That's what everybody got to remember. If you're going to remember me, the guy that the dog couldn't find.
Yeah,
that would have been a different story. If those dogs had found me, it'd been a different story to my life now.
Absolutely. Now they showed that, of course, the comeback. You were, I think, 18-0 at one point. In your career, when you started the comeback, did people start taking you seriously, and did you know that you really could fight for the heavyweight championship again?
Oh yeah, I never did lose confidence. I knew I could box. Coming back to training, I wasn't the same speedy hand, speedy body I had. I had to learn a new style. And I'd roll on the floor, covering myself up from head to toe and making a roll so I wouldn't have to keep putting my hand up and down. I kept my hand in place. It was pretty hard to hit me. And I still had the punch. The old saying that power never dies. I kept the power, and I knew how to promote myself. Finally, I got in the ring, Evander Holyfield, for a 12-round championship bout. And that's when I think the whole world took notice that the guy's just not a little publicity thing, that he can really fight. I lost that 12-round decision to Evander Holyfield, but from that point on, everyone took me serious.
And it's really interesting because they then show you fight, of course, Michael Moore in 1994, a fight that you were down on all the scorecards. What was your philosophy in that fight? Were you like, was he just outboxing you because he was that much younger, or did you have a certain philosophy where you were trying to wear him down? Because by the 10th round, he seemed like he was a little out of gas, and that's when you made your move.
Well, Michael Moore is similar to Muhammad Ali. They came into the business middleweights and light heavyweights, so those guys were pretty fast. I'd always been a heavyweight, so they were quicker, had a little quicker punch and snap than me. So with the Michael Moore fight, I just stayed in there, and I'm gonna tell you now, I'd have had 80 some odd boxing matches, and I never went out to win a decision. Every fight, I figured I'd knock the guy out. If he had gone 12 rounds, I didn't see them giving it to me anyway, because that's not what I try to do. I try to knock guys out. So finally, the opportunity presented itself in the fight. I led with a right hand and came back with hooks, right hand hooks, and then he just wasn't prepared for me to come back with a light left and then a hard right hand, and that's how the knockout occurred. But I was just waiting for a knockout anyway. I wasn't trying to win points. He was.
Sure. Yeah, no, and of course they showed your famous scene where you knelt in prayer, and everyone's around you going nuts, hugging you. Bob Arum's hugging you, and your trainers there, and Archie Moore, everybody. What were you thinking? What went through your head when you did the miraculous and regained the heavyweight championship at 45?
I've been a preacher full time, but I'd go into the ring. You'd never see me point up to the ceiling, or I never would make any gestures about religion in the ring, because I said, look, this is my profession. My religion, that's what I do every week at church anyway. But this time, I left the hotel room. I said, God, if I win this time, I'm just going to get on my knees and thank you before the world. And boom, it happened. That's when I said, it happened. I got on my knees and thank God. That's what that was all about.
I watched that fight with my dad.
You prepared to win, but you think, man, did this really happen? Oh, my goodness.
I remember I jumped up so high in my living room when you regained the heavyweight championship. I was like 14, 15 years old. I've never jumped that high to this day, George. I just want you to know that when I saw that happen.
I think there were a lot of nursing homes on fire that day.
Yeah. What was the biggest difference in your style from pre-comeback to post-comeback that you noticed?
I used to stop, block, get out of the way. And I came back trying that. I tried to stop and they'd hit me. I tried to block and they'd hit me. And I tried to get out of the way and the legs weren't the same. So I came back now with like a bowling ball. I just keep coming in waves and coming in waves. And a guy would have to be in great shape to keep up with those waves. And that's how I would overpower guys. Too many waves.
And my dad always used to tell me what he loved most about you was your crab-like defense, which is very much different than this. I'm in boxing now. I do it 3 days a week. Whenever I do the George Foreman crab-like defense, my coach tells me, what are you doing? Keep your hands like this. I said, no, in honor of Big George, I like to do this, especially when I'm trying to avoid the body shots. I love it.
It really helps too, because if you get hit right, you got you a pillow right there in place.
George, I don't know if you took it the way I took it. It sounded like you wanted to challenge you. It sounded like Brandon wanted to challenge you again in the ring. Like
no. I can't even. My mother should see me now. I can't even lose my temper.
Yeah, was that crab-like defense? Was that part of Archie Moore's little shtick there? I loved it.
And I worked years with Archie Moore. He never would even bring that style up to me. He never taught me anything about it. I had to learn how to defend myself like that pretty much on my own. Some Charlie Shipes would know a little about it, but he wouldn't express it. I had to figure it out myself. Put your hand in position and don't move them around. Don't do the windshield wiper like this and like that. Keep it in position. Because for a right hand like Muhammad, he was a great boxer. They should have told me that then, but he only threw his right hand in one particular spot. If you put your hand in that position, he wouldn't even throw it. That's what happened with Ken Norton and him. I think that trainer that Ken Norton had was pretty crafty himself with putting your hand in one position.
So you look at like the different ways that people fight, and you look at like the fighters of today. What is it that Canelo Alvarez has to do to be successful, like in his matches? Because we know he's coming off a loss. He's got the match tonight against John Ryder. What is it that he's got to do in order to say, you know what, I've got my L. I need to have my George Foreman-like comeback. What is it that Canelo's got to do?
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. That Canelo Alvarez is probably one of the best fighters. When I saw him early on in his career, he reminded me so much of the young George Foreman because he went out there trying to knock out everyone. He wanted a knockout. Now he's gotten crafty and smart and put on a lot of weight and everything. So he's going to have to figure it out for himself. Guys can beat him, but he is probably the most talented boxer around right now. If he can only get down to the lower weights again, he'd be a terror for the next 10 years.
Absolutely. And I tell you, and I bring this up the other day, my friends, my colleagues and I were talking about what would have happened if George Foreman had ever fought Mike Tyson. And I always tell them your famous line that, you know, one of us was scared and the other one didn't have nothing to do with the other one. But I still tell you, I would have loved to have seen that fight in the mid-90s when you and Tyson would have been, boy, with their power, man, that would have been an amazing bout. I've often thought about what would have happened if you ever guys had fought there.
Yeah, one scared and the other's glad of it.
You know, before we let you go
Mike
ahead.
Tyson, a phenomenon, though. What a phenomenon he was in boxing.
No doubt, no doubt. And I tell you, that movie, though, your movie, Big George Foreman, it not only inspired me, but it was such a feel-good story. I mean, there were so many things that happened in your life that I didn't even know about, despite that I've been following your career since the late 80s. And I really love the ending. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it's just some of the pictures and stuff versus they show the movie versus your real-life pictures. It was just a beautiful story, George. And honestly, it couldn't happen to a nicer person, a more wonderful human being to finally highlight your life and have a movie like again about you, Big George Foreman.
Thank you. You made my Saturday great now.
Well, you know, we appreciate you, George, and I just want you to know again, we can't thank you enough for joining us and being a part of our show, Fire and Ice. And of course, I want to thank your daughter, Leola, for helping making this possible. I know I drive her crazy sometimes, but I really appreciate you, Leola.
that Leola. Stay in touch with me, guys.
We will,
Yes,
George.
sir.
Good luck. Enjoy your Saturday. Everybody check out the movie Big George Foreman.
Awesome stuff, man. That's absolutely awesome. Anytime that we get to make him laugh, like I feel like we're doing a damn good job, Brandon. That's
Yeah.
the best thing about it. Also, you know, just I shamelessly, right? Like I haven't seen the movie. I want to go see the movie. There's like a whole list of movies that I haven't seen though. And just hearing the way you've spoken about it.
It's a great movie.
Dave were talking about the fact that he saw the movie and thought that it was fantastic as well.
Yeah.
Anytime I've come across someone, they all think it's fantastic. And then I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes right now. It's like at 45%. I'm like, this has to be like those, you know, those really hardcore, like your movie needs to be this type of way in order for us to like your movie.
Yes.
Just like to me, I'm one of these people that's like, why don't you just get lost in the moment, man?
Absolutely. No, and that's the thing is I did look up the reviews too. And then I watched the movie and I was like, you know, this is an entertaining 2 hour, 8 minute movie. And it, like I said, it does a wonderful job of really teaching you a lot about Big George that, you know, like I said, I didn't know about before. And I mean, it was a good flick. It was a good sports flick. And I highly recommend any boxing fans or any fans of George Foreman in general, go check it out and see what the man endured to become one of the greatest fighters in boxing history. It's very inspirational.
I want to give a big thank you to our guy, George Foreman, for joining us here on Fire and Ice. The fact that we can just say that, George Foreman joining us on Fire and Ice, the two guys that just grew up a love George Foreman. Yeah. But thank you to George Foreman joining us here on Fire and Ice. Thank you to everyone that was tuned into the show as well. I want to give a thank you to our friends over here at Union Draft House, 730 Sunland Park Drive on the west side of El Paso. It's Cider-Day, so they got the $4 ciders, and they've got the $2 build your own pizzas before 4 o'clock. So get on out here at any of the 4 or 5 Union Draft House locations that they've got in El Paso. Go check them out. And of course, go ahead and get your beers going for you as well. Number 18 was a root beer. Number 19 is this Alaskan lager, which is actually really, really damn good. Brandon and I are going to sip on some of these drinks. We're going to finish our nosh, our grease, whatever it is that we're doing here today. We're going to finish this up. And everybody, thank you so much for being a part of it. We will see you all later.
Thank you, guys.